Chapter 5 of Angel of the Andes, the story of St. Rose of Lima by Mary Fabyan Windeatt. 2 stories. The visit to the seminary was interesting, but Doña Maria de Quiñones did not stay long. She informed Rose that she had other places to visit. The nuns at the monastery of the Incarnation. That's right, the nuns at the monastery of the Incarnation? That's right. Perhaps we'll have time to go to the monastery of the Conception, and to the Trinity too. Doña Maria's carriage rolled swiftly through the narrow streets. Rose followed the busy scenes about her with interest, although it was not the magnificent buildings or the many colorful gardens which chiefly claimed her attention. Instead, it was the people in the streets, cripples and beggars and ragged little children. There were many of them, and they seemed to have forgotten how to smile. Doña Maria threw a swift glance at her young companion. "I can guess what you're thinking, my dear." The girl's dark eyes shone. "I was thinking that if I were a boy, I'd go to Santo Domingo tomorrow, so I could be a priest and do something for all these poor people. So many of them don't know a thing about God, Doña Maria. And there aren't enough priests here in Peru to teach them. It's a pity, isn't it?" The woman nodded. "A great pity, child. But tell me why you'd like to be a Dominican. Why not a Franciscan or a Jesuit or an Augustinian?" Rose smiled. So many other people were always asking the same question. "Because St. Catherine of Siena, Doña Maria. She was a Dominican tertiary. Such a wonderful person. We have a book at home that tells about her. I've read it so many times that I must know every word by now. I've read about her, too. She was certainly a wonderful person. But she was a tertiary, spending all her days in the world. She never entered a convent." "I know, Doña Maria. She belonged to the Third Order of St. Dominic. It must be a lovely life, since she loved it so much." "And a hard life, child. It takes a very special grace to become a saint while you go on living in the world." Rose laughed. "I'm going to try, Doña Maria. I won't ever marry or enter a convent. I've asked St. Catherine to help me to be like her. You see, when I was just 5 years old—" "Yes? It sounds like a rather foolish story, for I was very small then." Doña Maria smiled. "You tell me your story, and then I'll tell you one. And then I'll tell one. You tell me your story, and then I'll tell one," she said. "By that time, we should have reached the monastery of the Incarnation. But, of course, if you want to keep it a secret—" Rose shook her head. "It's not that important. Besides, when I'm older and people expect me to marry, I'll have to explain why I can't. So I'll first tell you. I know you'll understand." "Thank you, my dear. I'll respect your confidence." "It was one afternoon when Ferdinand and I were playing in the garden," began Rose. "I was 5, and he was 7. Mariana had just washed my hair, and I was pleased with the way it shone in the sun. It was soft and silky, and it had little curls in it. I was proud of those curls, Doña Maria. No doubt they were nice. But Ferdinand began to make fun of me. He pretended he was a priest preaching a sermon, and he talked about how foolish it is to be proud of one's clothes and one's looks. He said people go to hell for things like that. As I sat there listening to him, he suddenly took up a handful of dirt and threw it over my clean hair. 'You needn't be proud any more,' he said. At first I was really cross with Ferdinand, but after I thought it over, I decided he was right. We really shouldn't be so concerned over our looks, or whether we have money or health or education. Of course, he was only playing a game. He never thought I'd take him seriously, but I did. Then everyone was terribly angry with me." "Why, child?" "Because I decided to cut off my curls, as St. Catherine of Siena did when she was a little girl. Then I wouldn't be proud of my looks any more." Doña Maria laughed. "Your mother never told me about that," she said. "And I'm glad your hair has grown again, Rose. It's really very pretty." "Thank you, Doña Maria. There's more to my story than that. You see, when I cut off my hair, I promised our Lord that I would always love him more than anyone or anything. I was only 5, but I knew that all I wanted in life was to serve him and to work for his glory here on earth. I didn't want a husband or a home or children, only him. I understand. Of course, Mother doesn't know about this, and probably she'll be very angry when I do tell her. But that's the way it is, Doña Maria. There's nothing anyone can do that will make me change my mind. I belong to God forever and ever. Doña Maria smiled. That's a lovely story, she said softly, and I'm sure it will have a splendid ending someday. But don't be surprised if it's a bit different from the one you plan. Different? Yes, when you grow older you may find your vocation is to be a nun, not a Dominican tertiary like St. Catherine. After all, considering the gifts God has given you, it may be wiser to serve him in the religious life than in the world. Maybe, Doña Maria, but right now I don't think so. The woman smiled. Well, we'll see. Now suppose I tell you my story. We've come almost to the monastery of the Incarnation, and I want you to hear it before we get there. Oh yes, Doña Maria, I nearly forgotten that you have a story too. The woman settled back in the carriage. It was January 6th, 1535, that Don Francesco Pizarro founded our city of Lima. You know that as well as I do, Rose. And you know, too, how he was murdered by his enemies in 1541. Well, for some years afterward, things were unsettled in Peru. Some of Pizarro's followers wanted to rule the country themselves, and they urged people to revolt against the lawful ruler, the King of Spain. One of these rebels was Captain Francisco Hernandez de Giron. He was finally caught, however, and executed on December 9th, 1554. His body was then put in a sack and tied to a horse to be dragged through the streets of Lima. What a dreadful thing to do! Yes, it was meant to be a warning to others who might revolt against the King of Spain. However, the one who suffered the most through all this was the captain's wife, Doña Mencia. She saw the whole dreadful punishment, even her husband's body being dragged through the streets. For weeks she could not get rid of the memory. Finally she told her mother, Doña Leonor Portocarrero, that she wanted to spend the rest of her days praying for Captain Francisco's soul, even though he had died as a common criminal. Perhaps God's mercy had saved him from hell. Perhaps he was even then in purgatory, suffering for his sins and crying out for prayers from his friends. So what did she do, Doña Maria? Doña Leonor agreed with Doña Mencia. She too had wished to devote her life to prayer. So they visited Father Andrew, the prior of the Augustinian monastery near their home. They told him about the unfortunate captain and explained that they wanted to be nuns and spend the rest of their days praying for his soul. Rose smiled. He let them do it. He let them do it, Doña Maria? He helped them build the first convent for women in Lima? Doña Maria stared at her companion. You know this story as well as I do, Rose. Why didn't you tell me? Because I love to hear you talk. You make things so interesting. Really, though, I didn't know the whole story, not the part about the poor captain's body being dragged through the streets. Well, it's true. And it's also true that Doña Leonor and Doña Mencia received the Augustinian habit from Father Andrew and started to lead the religious life in their own house. That was around 1558. Some people didn't approve of the idea at all. They thought the two women should have waited until they had more money and more helpers, but there was the captain's soul to remember, you see. They didn't have to wait long to have a real monastery, did they? Only 3 years. There it is, down the street, child, the Monastery of the Incarnation. It was built in 1561. The towers of the monastery were before them, and the thick adobe walls that shut off the garden from the street. Rose turned to her companion eagerly as the carriage drove up to the front door. Lima has been first in so many things, Doña Maria. Father was telling us just the other day that we have the first university in all America. It was founded in the Dominican convent on May 12, 1551, by Father Thomas of San Martin. Aha, you do like the Dominicans, Rose. You're always singing their praises. But it's true, Doña Maria, the University of San Marcos was first. But don't forget the seminary we just visited. It's a pioneer venture, too. And we have the first hospital, Santa Ana, founded by a Dominican Doña Maria, founded by a Dominican, Dona Maria, in 1549. You've not forgotten that our first Archbishop, Jerome de Loyaasa, belonged to Saint Dominic's family. The woman threw up her hands in mock despair. Come along, child. You know more than I do about Lima's history. Rose found the basket of food which Dona Maria had brought for the nuns. As she followed her friend toward the heavy wooden gate, she had a sudden wonderful idea. Maybe Lima would be first in something else, the first place in all the Americas to have a canonized saint. Perhaps Dona Maria's own uncle, Archbishop Turribius, she thought. He's such a holy man.